Shamrock Energy coming at you in a much better mood than what I was last week. Notre Dame eviscerates their former rival Purdue 66-7 in what was perhaps the most dominant, from a margin perspective, the most dominant performance produced by Notre Dame since 1973 against a Power 5 opponent. We'll have to dig deeper into the annals of history to figure that one out. I don't have any confirmation on that, but definitely curious on what that statistic really is, because that was impressive. Most dominant performance that Notre Dame has had against a Power 5 opponent in my lifetime, for sure. Purdue is bad. We'll talk more about that. Notre Dame, there are still questions left unanswered. We will get into that as well, but first, let's talk about the injuries. The worst part of this whole thing, Ashton Craig seems to have the best prognosis so far. Notre Dame is holding this very close to their chest, as they have with just about all the injuries this year. We'll get more on that as probably the day goes, and especially as the week goes. Billy Schrouth was in a walking boot during the game, so two of your best offensive linemen, in my opinion, are now out. We don't know how long they will be out, but that is absolutely a concern. It's a bad thing. No spin in it. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means for that offensive line, what it meant for this game as we talk more. Jordan Botelho probably out for the season. No words to describe how devastated I am for him. That is a really, really tough loss. It's a loss for the team, no doubt. But it's a bigger loss for Jordan Botelho, and I feel horrible for him. I feel as bad as I did for Charles Jaggersaw, if not worse. Just so unfortunate on so many levels. This is a player that Notre Dame took a chance on to bring him back. He was emotional in response when they took a chance on him to come back. Finally, he was playing his best football on the most consistent basis that he has in his career at Notre Dame. For that to happen when it did, it's really unfortunate, man. Non-contact injury, grabbing his knee, didn't look good, doesn't feel good. Cart brought out. You hope it's better news than what we're hearing right now. I want to talk, before we get into some of the big pictures and some of the questions that have, still kind of been hanging around and lingering throughout this season. I want to talk about who stood out. You'd probably have a shorter video in talking about who didn't stand out. On defense, we'll start. The defensive line took a step forward. They took a step in the right direction today. I was extremely concerned going into this game based off the product that we saw over the last 2 weeks. Was Notre Dame's defensive line regressing? One of the hallmarks of this defense last year, it just looked as though it wasn't quite there against A&M, and it certainly didn't look good against NIU. But you got Riley Mills in the position to make a play, makes the play, forces the interception. The pick six by Boubacar Traore. Boubacar Traore, speaking of, looked good. Yes, this is his true coming out party. That was what this weekend was. He's been impressive in flashes this year, but to see how he performed against Purdue yesterday was awesome. It was really, really cool to see. Love the pick six. Love the pressure that guy brings. Boubacar Traore is going to be a very good football player for a very long time at Notre Dame. What the future holds for him if he was to, get into the NFL, we'll see. But the ceiling is limitless for a guy like that. Howard Cross seemed to be back to who he was last year. There was questions about if the hamstring was lingering. And that is an absolutely valid question to ask. But he looked good. The penetration all across the board was awesome. Jason Onye took a step forward in his game. Unnecessary step forward. Very, very good by him. Good penetration. Impressed with what we saw as what he brought, as far as the pass rush was concerned. Bryce Young, more on special teams than what he did on the defensive side of the ball. That's a guy that has to get a little bit more comfortable with his moves, pass rush-wise. He looked uncomfortable, looked unnatural, looked raw. When you tell him to run somewhere in a straight line, he's going to hurt somebody. That guy is dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And you love to see a young, talented guy like that out there. RJ Oben has been subjected to a lot of criticism, and it's all been justified. He has not been the player that Notre Dame thought that they were getting in the Duke transfer. Took a step forward today. That was encouraging. And you start to wonder, what does this defensive line look like when Gabriel Rubio comes back? Donovan Heinisch, also impressive. How do they divvy out those snaps? But you get excited. You get excited when you think about what this defensive line can look like with Gabriel Rubio. Linebacker, next level. Jalen Sneed. Oh, you know how I feel about him. It's a dying breed, having someone that can lay the boom the way that he does. Jars the ball. Every time Jalen Sneed makes a play, this dude stands out. If he's by the ball, a play's getting made, and it's going to be a tackle with authority. He plays with authority. There's a reason we heard about him as much as we did during spring and fall camp as being one of the most improved guys out there in that linebacker room. That light is flipping on, and it's staying on. Started happening a little bit last year towards the end of the season. Now he has taken that step. This is a guy that is dangerous. I would not want to be a tight end catching the ball down the middle with him, and I don't want to be a running back that's on the receiving end of his tackle. Very scary guy. It's really, really fun to watch him play the way that he does. KVA, Kingston Viliama Asa. You start to see what the future is with him. That is a guy that does not play like a true freshman. He gets his first interception this year of his career. In addition to that, I loved what he was able to offer and run support when he had his opportunities. Oh man, as that guy continues to ascend throughout this year, the sky's the limit for a guy like that. Jack Kaiser had an improved game from what he had last week. Jack Kaiser is Jack Kaiser. He's really, really good at football. He's a really good linebacker. This room, this defense is better off with his presence. At safety, the safeties were quiet for the most part until Kennedy Urlacher came in. Admittedly, I will admit, I didn't pay attention to his recruitment as much. He is a take. He was a take then. I didn't expect what we saw, though. I mean, bear with me. No, he's not Kyle Hamilton, but the way that he plays in the box reminds me of Kyle Hamilton. It's like the dude's always around the ball. It was so much fun to watch that defense do what they did because Purdue didn't yank any of their starters out. Interesting move. Probably wouldn't have done it. Ryan Walters elected to keep his starters out there, and you didn't really notice a difference at all. That defense is absolutely everything that we expected them to be, and then some. At least what I expected them to be. I won't speak for other people, but they're as elite as you thought they would be. And honestly, Jordan Clark is performing better than I expected him to as well. He stood out in a very significant way. Benjamin Morrison is Benjamin Morrison. Christian Gray almost had an interception. Could have been a pick six. I mean, it's like the list goes on and on when you look at this defense and who's going to contribute this year. It is exactly what I'd kind of expected. But when you see it on film, it does not lie, brothers and sisters. This is a very, very good group led by a defensive coordinator that showed an abundance of confidence in this guy or in his unit. So impressive. Al Golden just in his bag. This is what we've grown accustomed to for about a year and a half now under Al Golden. This is just the defense that you get. This is the product that you could expect. And it doesn't matter how good of an offense you are. This is a defense that is capable of keeping you in the teens point-wise, even on a bad day. It's a very, very impressive unit. I mean, in my opinion, there's a conversation there that they might be the best in the country. If you put a Georgia uniform on each and every one of those players, you would not notice a difference. I wouldn't trade this defense for any in the country. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody. Xavier Watts doing Xavier Watts things. When you don't mention like Benjamin Morrison in a game, it's kind of like Cam Hart. It's like, they're not throwing it his way. He did get beat. When you see him get beat, it's almost like a shock. But I was impressed with that defense top to bottom. That there's no faking how dominant that defense was yesterday. 7 points, to be honest with you, they got lucky that they scored those 7 points. If Kennedy Urlacher doesn't tackle Jaden Mickey, that doesn't happen. And I loved the way that they responded on defense after that. You know, typically when you have your second and third team and even fourth team, you know, in the rotation against your, you know, a starting offense in Purdue, you could expect that defense to kind of roll over and just not take it seriously. No, they were as disruptive as the starting unit. Top to bottom, that's a championship-ready defensive unit. On offense, who stood out? Jeremiah Love's the best football player on the field, and he's going to be the best football player on the field until this team, if this team makes a playoff push. And even then, he might be better than everybody else on the field, no matter who Notre Dame plays. That's how impressive Jeremiah Love is. The ball's in his hands. If there's a little bit of space, look out. And I said that all offseason. It's not like a hot take to say that, but dude is impressive. It's just very impressive. And this is totally my opinion. Okay, it's just a gut feeling that I have in that backfield. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price might have respect for each other, but I don't know if they like each other. I think that they look at each other as a bit of a threat, which from our standpoint and from the staff's POV and from the team's POV as a whole, that's a good problem to have. It's like when you see Jeremiah Love make a play, you can all but guarantee Jadarian Price is going to do the same thing right after that when he gets his opportunity. We've seen this now in almost 4 games now, where one guy will make a play, and it's almost as if the other player will view it as like they got food taken off their plate. They got money taken out of their bank account. They take it personal. Those two are so impressive. They're the best running back duo in the country. So fun to watch. For Jadarian Price to go off the way that he did right before the first half ended, we're not used to seeing that. Like, that's just a dynamic group that we are lucky to have. Very fun. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's 1A, 1B, but Jeremiah Love's just different. He's a different type of cat. He's a different type of athlete. This is a guy that will make plays anywhere at any time with the ball in his hands. If either of those guys gets to the edge, it's a problem for every defense. Doesn't matter who you are. It is a freaking problem. They did it against A&M. They did it against Northern Illinois to a degree. They did it this week against Purdue, and they did it to Oregon State in the bowl game last year. I love this duo. And I felt like that's what we could expect. But now it's all but confirmed. If one guy makes the play, the other guy's going to make a play right after, and it's going to be equally as impressive. Wide receiver, you know, there are guys that are open. Bo Collins is Bo Collins. Jaden Thomas. We got a Jaden Thomas sighting this weekend, which was great. Stepped up when it mattered. Purdue ran a man concept defense, and if you're moving forward, if you're a defense, you shouldn't do that. You should be in zone, because that's the best way to beat this offense. Riley Leonard with a very impressive day running the football. He's the first player since Lamar Jackson to have 100 yards rushing, 100 yards passing, and 3 rushing touchdowns in one single game. Is Riley Leonard Lamar Jackson? The jury's still out. I say jokingly. We know he's not Lamar Jackson, but impressive nonetheless. Riley Leonard running the football is so impressive to watch. And this is where we'll kind of shift into the big picture. Let's talk defense really quick, big picture. I think I kind of already said what I needed to say on that. This is a defense, even on its bad day, it's gonna reduce your offense to scoring points in the teens, and you just have to rely on your defense now to stop Notre Dame's offense. That's it. That point blank. You got a defensive coordinator that is in his freaking bag and has been in his bag for a year and a half now. You've got a defensive coordinator that has an abundance amount of confidence in this unit. And you've got players that when they play with conviction, there's just about no one better than them. Elite. 10 out of 10. Still not perfect, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, they were 10 out of 10. Just dominant yesterday. And you can't wait to see how it unfolds. With the Jordan Botelho injury, is it impactful? Absolutely it is, but now you get to watch some of these. I'm not trying to minimize that injury. I would never do that, but now you get to see the depth that's there. The Bryce Youngs, maybe the Junior T's of the world. We'll see. You know, the Josh Burnhams, the Boubacar Traore's. They can all play at different positions at Viper or at the strong side defensive end position. Really, really fun. So I still think that the ceiling is limitless with that defense. But on offense, you know, let's talk big picture. So, and just some observations that I had in that game. Mike Denbrock calls a perfect game for what they were looking for in this offense. They rushed for almost 400 yards today, and they could have rushed for more. They could have scored 80 today, but they didn't. They just let go. That was one of those days. I was taken aback by how the offensive line performed today. I think it's the first time that I've watched this offensive line look truly dominant against a defense that was going to load the box, against a defense that was going to dare you to throw. Notre Dame didn't have to do that. And the fact that Purdue also decided to run man, it was almost like I heard someone else say this. I think it was, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Irish Sports Daily or Irish Breakdown, but it was like very Pat Narduzzi type game plan. Like that's just what they wanted to run, and it was a mistake to do so. And, you know, I think that Mike Denbrock really showed, you know, a great deal of resolve in the way that he called this game. It had a clear identity. It was not a concept of a plan. It was a plan. It was a clear plan that worked today. But now we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is the quarterback situation. So we all saw what we saw, and there's no avoiding it. Riley Leonard, as natural as he looks as a runner, he looks the exact opposite as a thrower right now. I can attribute this to a couple different things. One, I think that most importantly, you lost valuable reps throughout the spring season and spring ball. You didn't get the reps that you needed. I think that Riley Leonard also just doesn't have the arm talent that you would like at the quarterback position. There were wide open guys, Jeremiah Love. You missed a wide open Bo Collins. Instead of going through his reads, he scurries out of the pocket, still gets the first down, but against a better team, that just ain't gonna cut it. Misses a back shoulder with Jaden Thomas. Misses an in route with, I think it was Jane Thomas as well. Again, misses a wide open Jeremiah Love, and then he misses a shot with Bo Collins where it was just like a fluky play, but one that you would have liked to have seen. It was a wide open Bo Collins, and we need to get the monkey off the back. Still, Riley Leonard is yet to throw a touchdown this year. And still, we find ourselves asking the question, what is the long-term solution at quarterback? Because Steve Angeli came in today. Yesterday. He had a decent amount of playing time and a decent amount of live reps for the entire second half. And Steve Angeli looked comfortable. Mike Denbrock looked more comfortable calling plays for Steve Angeli than what he did for Riley Leonard. Just an observation. I think that Mike Denbrock is much more comfortable calling plays for a Steve Angeli type quarterback than what he is with a guy like Riley Leonard. Kind of to be expected based on the fact that right now Riley Leonard can't hit the broadside of a barn. Okay? He's struggling. The struggle's real. And so naturally, when you have a quarterback that comes in, throws for 2 touchdowns, one was, I think Riley Leonard could have thrown that. I think that I could have thrown it. And if you ever see me throw a football, you know that that's crazy, but that's how wide open Cooper Flanagan was on that RPO. And so naturally, fans, especially the pro Angeli camp, are going to look at that and say, well, Steve Angeli should start. And I don't think that that's true at all. I think that we saw it. And I said this last week. I said, you know what will happen is Steve Angeli is going to look good for 2 weeks. Teams are going to have film on him, and then that freaking Band-Aid that you put over the bullet hole is going to peel right off. and all the blemishes are going to be revealed yet again, and then you're going to have to go back to Riley Leonard, and then we're going to have this seesaw situation that we've seen way too often at Notre Dame. Dating as recently as freaking 2021 and 2022. The reality is, no, 2021. That's as recent as it's been. We've just seen too much of that, and we just haven't had a long-term solution at quarterback. And Ian Book sure was the long-term solution, but whatever. You know my thoughts on that. I just we find ourselves in the same problem here. And Steve Angeli, in my opinion, is the least likely as a long-term solution. I think that the most likely, as far as a long-term solution at quarterback, is Riley Leonard just plays better. We're not asking him to throw the ball over the field. He's not Jane Daniels. He's not Caleb Williams. He ain't Kyler Murray. He's Riley Leonard. And we need Riley Leonard to play his game at a higher level than what he is right now. You have to be able to make some of those throws that he missed out on. You got to be able to make progressions. You got to be able to be a little bit more comfortable in the pocket and stop feeling ghosts that aren't there. That is what needs to happen first and foremost. Anybody that's calling for Steve Angeli to start over Riley Leonard is not paying attention, okay? Because I got news for you. I'm not a mathematician, but those 3 touchdowns that Riley Leonard scored today on the ground, they all count for 6 points. Doesn't matter if it's through the air or on the ground, all right? I'm not denying the fact that there's an issue here. I'm not denying the fact that there's absolutely some questions that need to be answered, and they need to be answered like next week. Like, that's how quickly we need answers right now. But I also do believe that Riley Leonard deserves the right to have his time to figure this out, okay? That is the most realistic and most likely scenario in which we find a long-term solution at this position right now for this season, to win a title this season, to make a playoff push this season. I'm not saying that any of those things are going to happen, but if you think Steve Angeli is going to come out there and he's going to lead you to a playoff berth and a playoff run, you're on freaking crack. You need to put the freaking pipe down, because that ain't happening. He is limited physically. As limited as Riley Leonard looks right now throwing the football, Steve Angeli is more limited in his athletic ability, in his arm talent, in all of that, and also in his pocket presence. I'm sorry. If the first 2 reads aren't open, he's the most sackable quarterback in the country. Most sackable quarterback that I have seen in a long time. Probably since Jack Cohn. Sack Cohn. I'm just saying, like, you pick your poison. Pick your problem at this point. What I would love is if Riley Leonard did really just put all this to bed and hit some of the throws that he needed to hit. That didn't happen yesterday. And I understand that it's a problem. There's a faction of the fan base that's negative just to be negative, and that's not what I'm here for, man. I'm not that guy. I will never be that guy. I will also be realistic, though. And I get that it's a problem, but I think it's fixable. And I believe that there is owed time to Riley Leonard right now to figure it out, because he brings so much to the table otherwise. If and when that happens, the ceiling of this offense just got raised big time, and the ceiling of this team becomes scary. It becomes limitless, just like the defense, right? Because you've got, in my opinion, the best, one of, if not the best defenses in the country. Okay, they're showing that. They're proving that. Guys, they have allowed, let's do the math real quick. 13. They've allowed 36 points in 3 games. Okay? You have the luxury to figure this out right now. Your schedule is totally manageable. Each team on that schedule, Notre Dame should beat. Straight up. Straight up. And I understand what we went through last weekend. But you have the luxury of time to figure this out, for Riley Leonard to get into somewhat of a rhythm. We're not asking for him to be this freaking dynamo throwing the football. I don't expect Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or all of the above, right? I just expect him to be a better Riley Leonard at this point. And that can happen. There are going to be people that comment on this video, if there are any comments, and I hope that there are, that are going to come in and say that I'm delusional, and I'm not. I've seen Riley Leonard play. I know Riley Leonard's better than what he's showing right now. He's uncomfortable. Whatever he's seeing right now, coverage-wise, Whatever he's seeing right now from his wide receivers, he's uncomfortable. I need him to find some type of a groove, some type of a rhythm, some type of way to get that going throwing the football. I would have loved to have seen that last weekend, but when something's working, something's working. And I'm sorry, but after last week, you are not owed the luxury of, let's try some new things on offense. That's not it. I think that he was put in position to succeed. He didn't rise to the occasion as far as throwing the football. He made up for it, okay? He made up for it in spades with the way that he ran the football. And Steve Angeli ain't ever going to be able to do that. Your offense becomes much more one-dimensional with Steve Angeli out there. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. I don't want to hear that Steve Angeli mess anymore, because I'll tell you who should be the number 2 quarterback on this roster. I'll tell it to you right now. It's Kenny Minchey. Kenny Minchey offers you, this is the second most, not likely, but this would be the second option, in my opinion, on what a long-term solution would look like at quarterback, and it's Kenny Minchey. Arm talent, mobility, all of that is a balance from what we've seen. He's going to put the ball at risk. He's going to have some what-the-fuck throws. Guess what? He's a gunslinger. And I hope that they don't beat that out of him. But I need this staff to pull their heads out of their asses and freaking take a long look in the mirror again at what that quarterback room is, because there's a clear ceiling with Steve Angeli, and I don't know what the ceiling is with Kenny Minchey. But I like that option better. I think that we're misutilizing him. I think that we're putting him at risk to transfer. I don't think he's getting a fair shake. I think Gino Guidugli loves Steve Angeli. And I think that also at the same time, Steve Angeli is the best example of quarterback development at Notre Dame under Gino Guidugli. And I think that that's a strong endorsement, because Steve Angeli's gotten a lot better from the time that he was here on campus. That's a guy with the least amount of tools in that room. And yet he has gotten better, and yet he has improved, and yet he threw an absolute dime to Jaden Harrison. Looked comfortable at times. But I just think with Steve Angeli, you know what you're going to get, and I think that that is the argument that the staff has in putting him out there. To me, that's an argument not to put him out there as QB2. If we're going to look in a different direction than Riley Leonard, which I don't think is going to happen yet, we need to really be looking at Kenny Minchey as that option. Because knowing what Steve Angeli is, to me, is enough to put him at QB3 and potentially QB4, and he should probably be a starter at Syracuse, Rutgers, Arizona State, Cal, or frickin' Stanford. That is not a Notre Dame starting quarterback, and I'm not going to hear any more arguments about that. Truly, I won't. I'll entertain it, and I'll discuss it with you, but I'm not going to be swayed. I'm not going to be swayed. So that's the hierarchy for me. Riley Leonard, just be a better Riley Leonard than what you are right now. And I don't think it's that unrealistic of an ask. Kenny Minchey, give him a shot. Give him a trial run. If you are going to look in a different direction in the next couple weeks at quarterback, you need to be real as a staff at what puts you in the best position to not just win today, but win long term. Steve Angeli will give you an option to win today, technically, in theory, against all of the opponents that Notre Dame plays. But I don't think that Kenny Minchey puts you at risk of losing a game. I think that Kenny Minchey is extremely talented. I think he's a very capable quarterback. And I think that if we saw Kenny Minchey on another team in the country, we would be looking back, and this staff would look back at how they mismanaged it and regret it. Because I think that he's a lot better than QB3 right now. I think he's better than Angeli, and I think that that's obvious. We had reports throughout all spring, all fall, that Kenny Minchey and C.J. Carr were the best ball in the room. And I was actually kind of surprised that Steve Angeli is still QB2. And I just think that we need to pull our heads out of our asses as a staff and be honest about that. Quit playing it so safe. You know what I mean? But I hope that we don't have to have that conversation. I hope that ultimately Riley Leonard just improves, makes the necessary adjustments to his game that are needed, because those receivers deserve it. I would like to see that next week, and it's something I'm going to be looking for, literally looking for. There was someone that tweeted, it would be hilarious if Notre Dame won out and Riley Leonard just didn't throw a touchdown pass. I mean, and after you saw him play yesterday, you can kind of see how that could be a scenario that happens, but I think that Ryan Leonard's really, it's a lot closer than you think. Now, here's the reality, though. I'm watching this team yesterday, and I'm thinking this offense is very 2017. Very 2017. Has that type of vibe. Except Ryan Leonard's throwing the ball worse than Brandon Wimbush right now. I need him, and that's the reality of it. He is actually throwing the football worse than Brandon Wimbush at the moment. But the difference is that we know Riley Leonard is capable of being better than that. So can we find some solutions there? I don't know. I truly don't know. That's why I'm asking the question. I don't know. I know that the staff is desperate for it. I know that the receivers have to be freaking desperate for it at this point. And the chickens are going to come home to roost. So, but it ain't going to happen after yesterday. Okay? It's not, and it shouldn't. He needs another week to be able to prepare, to be able to find some rhythm through the air, and then we're having a better conversation. Then we're having a happy we waited, happy we were patient. There's a balance, and it's a risky move either way. You could either gamble. Both of them are a gamble that you have to make as a staff. You can gamble on keeping Riley Leonard in and continuing to, hey, let's let this play out. And after last weekend, that's a scary prospect for all of us. We're all rattled. And it's also a gamble to put someone else in other than Riley Leonard right now, because I think that you're kind of like taking some development and some of that ceiling of this offense off the table. And you're also taking away the running threat that Riley Leonard is. And so that's a decision that you have to make as a staff. And let's be honest, like that, I can't imagine that it's not a conversation. It has to be, right? Like any staff that's worth its salt is evaluating that and keeping a close eye on it. It may not be an open discussion yet, but you're keeping your eye on it, which they should. There was also, this, and I actually hate this. I hate it, genuinely. There's this option where you roll with the Steve Angeli, and then, in certain packages, you put Riley Leonard in, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I've seen that movie before. I know how it ends, and I don't love it. I'm just going to say that. I don't think that two quarterbacks is ever the solution. We know the old adage. I'm not even going to repeat it. Yes, I am. If you have two quarterbacks, you have zero quarterbacks. I do believe that, especially in today's game. Like, I don't see a scenario in which that works, because you put Riley Leonard in, you kind of know what's going to happen at that point. Just like what they did with Tyler Buckner. And I don't think that that's fair. I think that handicaps this team tremendously. I think that we need to be patient. I think we need to be patient on what this offense is going to be. Let it evolve. It's 3 weeks. And I understand that there is this, you have to grapple with waiting for it to evolve and also being in a position like you were against NIU. But that's just the game that we play. That's football. There's no guarantees here. I just think that the highest probability of your offense reaching its ceiling is with Riley Leonard at quarterback right now. You got him for a reason. Find a way to develop him. Find a way to make him more comfortable if you're Mike Denbrock. I thought that the game plan was perfect. I thought that there's no perfect game plans, really, but I thought it was well run, well executed. I think that also at the same time, you should never bank on this offensive line, especially with the injuries to Ashton Craig and Billy Shroud. I don't think you should bank on this offensive line of being dominant week in and week out. I think that that's insane. You do need to find some answers through the air, and you need to find them quickly. So we'll see if there's a way to do that. Because if you're a defense, you're running zone. Do not run man. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it if you're up against Notre Dame, because we saw NIU run zone. We saw A&M run zone, albeit I think that A&M's defense is still one of the best in the country. I'll maintain that. I'll die on that hill. At any rate, that's what it is. And I have no answers. Those are the ones that I propose. Those are some of the solutions that I have. And I think that the most likely right now is that Ryan Leonard is still our quarterback one, and I'm not angry about that. But there's going to be a lot on his shoulders, and he knows it. There's a monkey on his back, and he is going to have to rip that off eventually, or it just doesn't happen. The light doesn't turn on. What I hope doesn't happen out of all of those outcomes is that Steve Angeli is quarterback one, and that's not a knock on him. He's a limited player. He's a limited player, and he could prove me wrong, but he hasn't proven me wrong yet. So there you go. And if you're pro Angeli, I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not trying to be a dick. That's how I feel. That's what I see. And if you're seeing something different, tell me what you're seeing. A couple comments as well, just like big picture team wise. This outcome was not shocking in the sense that Marcus Freeman's team was going to respond. This is something that we've known for 3 years now under Marcus Freeman coach teams, is that they respond well from adversity. They bounce back. I don't think anybody expected it to be as dominant as what it was yesterday. That was, a pleasant surprise for sure. Just didn't expect it to look the way that it did. I was nervous as hell all week for this game. I didn't love the feeling. And now you literally can't take anything for granted. And us as fans, and really just anybody that follows the program, unfortunately, there's no satisfying us after what happened last Saturday, after that fateful day. And that's just the reality. That's the reality of it. I mean, Marcus Freeman is going to have to wear that game on him forever, at least until the end of this season, and we'll see how it plays out. That's not going away anytime soon. That's always going to be something that's in the back of our heads. I don't know if it's going to be in the back of the football team's heads, but I mean, that's just how it is. And we saw this last year. We saw this the year before. This team responds well when shit doesn't go their way. Marcus Freeman does a very good job of that. That is something that he is head and shoulders better at than what Brian Kelly was, but something that he needs to improve on. And we talked about it last week, is they need to be able to handle success better. This needs to be a sustained run. There's no option other than that. Like, you have to be able to perform, not totally like that. You have to be able to perform week in and week out. I said it last Saturday in my emotional tirade. It gets slept on how much of a grind the college football season is and how up and down it is. Georgia almost lost to Kentucky, okay? You know what I mean? Like, everybody has their issues right now. Everybody has their problems. There's no perfect team this year. We knew that going into it. Alabama looked strong yesterday, but Alabama's going to have some performances as the season goes on that don't look good, right? And no one's a finished product. Notre Dame knows, and a lot of teams have weaknesses. Notre Dame knows their weakness right now. It was very, very clear yesterday. Find a way not to be one-dimensional, and then we're talking some serious stuff here. But ultimately, though, Notre Dame's going to have to find a way to sustain this. And there was a comment that was made, and everybody kind of noticed it. Freeman was chippy in that press conference, which he's been chippy in the past, but not like that. Like, he looks like he's over it as far as the media pleasantries are concerned. This was the first week that Marcus Freeman's job was called into question. I think he took it personal. And there's this mantra that you hear some of the players bring up, and they'll say it. You catch it if you watch any clips or you follow any interviews on the side. The players will always say, no one but the men in this building. That meaning the only opinions that they value are those that are in the building. And this team played pissed off. They played with reckless abandon. They played fast. They played convicted. And no team that I've followed with Notre Dame embodies their head coach like Marcus Freeman. And Marcus Freeman is pissed off right now. And Marcus Freeman's going to be pissed, I hope, is going to be pissed off for quite some time this season. I hope that this works out for him. I mean, we all want Marcus Freeman to succeed, but he saw that. He heard it. There's no way not to. Any coach or player that says they don't pay attention to the media is hilarious. Everybody pays attention to the media. Everybody pays attention to the opinions that they have of others. I mean, it's just how it is, man. And you know what? There's also a comment like, man, I feel bad for Mark. Like he looks fucking burnt out, and it's like, yeah, he is. He's miserable. You know, Charlie Weiss said it in his 60 Minutes interview back in 2006. He goes, all coaches are miserable. I never forgot that. And you're looking at Marcus Freeman and you're like, he's miserable right now. There is not one part of him that's happy at all. He's not satisfied. He's not cool with what happened last weekend. He's not going to let people forget that, I hope. And I think he's pissed off about the fact that his conversation with Thomas Hammock got leaked out there. Yeah, he made a comment. He was like, yeah, it was a private conversation between two coaches. Had conversations with coaches in the past. Like, damn, Marcus. I think he's pissed off about that too. No time for sentimentality for him. No feel good. He is humble pied out, man. He is over it. And we heard about it last year, how pissed off he was about and how pissed off the staff was about how last year turned out. I've heard, you know, I don't have legitimate concrete intel because I don't have sources like that. But you heard some of the comments that he had in the back room about what he needed, and I don't think it was a pleasant conversation. You know, the persona that Marcus Freeman puts out there in the, you know, Wake Up the Echoes documentary, and the persona that you get when he's up in front of boosters is this is a guy that's really, really well behaved and, you know, super prim and proper. He's like a choir boy, and he's not. He's not. He's a fucking football coach. And he's a competitor, and he, you know, that's the thing. When you're pursuing something like this, men in general don't respond to that with happiness, frolicking through the fucking bed of flowers. That's not what this is, man. Marcus Freeman ain't riding a rainbow right now. He's not living the dream. He's fucking miserable. And that's how greatness works, right? And it doesn't matter if it's coaching football or if you're a stock trader or you're a salesman. You are in misery. You are a shell of who you think you are. And in that, you find yourself, right? And all of a sudden, you know, all that misery and all that pain, you're in like this dream, this nightmare, and then you wake up hoisting a trophy, driving a Bugatti, walking up and looking at your beachfront property and getting the keys for it. And that's what we're witnessing right now. I can only hope that's what we're witnessing right now is misery. And people are going to misconstrue that and think that that's me being mean-spirited, like, oh, he should be miserable. No, it's just the reality of it, man. Anybody that's trying to pursue anything worthwhile is going to have that sensation. Women and children are allowed to be happy. Men are not. Men are not. That's not at all what we signed up for, okay? I didn't sign up to be happy. Marcus Freeman didn't sign up to be happy. He signed up to win a fucking national championship and then get a trophy outside the stadium. Okay? So, and really, it all goes down to the mind. You could pick your problems. You can choose your hard, right? And Notre Dame, what do they say? Choose hard. That's what Marcus Freeman says. Choose hard. He's choosing hard right now. And that means that he's probably not going to be the friendliest guy to be around. That means that he's probably going to demand a level of excellence that could, in some cases, be unattainable. But he knows. You could see it in that press conference. He knows that Notre Dame has not reached what it needs to. It has not reached its quote-unquote full potential that he likes to say. And I think that he probably says that more than anything, right? Full potential, full potential, full potential. Players probably get sick of hearing about it. But you can tell his team has not reached its full potential. You can tell there's issues. I think there's really only one like major outright issue right now, but it's a fixable one. And he knows it, and he's frustrated, and he's pissed off that his team is inconsistent. And he's pissed off that last weekend happened because he knows what this team is capable of. What they did yesterday is not what this team is capable of. It's just the start of what it's capable of. And that is something that we're going to keep an eye on. I want to watch that closely. I always like looking into the psychology of like people that are in high stress situations, and very few people are feeling the level of stress that Marcus Freeman probably felt last week. But they got through it. They didn't just get through it. They responded really, really well. That was a get through it type game. That's where our mindset was as fans, not in that building. They were pissed off and they were looking to make a statement. You felt bad for Purdue being on the other end of that. And I hope that continues. Kind of like how it did in 2017 after they lost to Georgia. That locker room resolve was so strong, led by Drew Tranquil. They had such strong, led by Quentin Nelson. They had such strong leadership that you felt bad for anybody that was about to play Notre Dame until they had another big game against Miami. They were one-dimensional, and it showed, right? So I liked what I saw there. I enjoyed watching that. I thought that was something really, really cool. Like, I love an emotional team. I love a team that embodies the emotions of Marcus Freeman, of their head coach. But I need Marcus Freeman to also be consistent in his approach. And I need him to be consistent in their preparation. We all need that. He needs that for his job security, for his ultimate legacy. And he knows that. And the players know it too. Because it was mentioned multiple times in the post-game presser. Like, we just need to prepare better than what we did last week. And we know that we could do great things. And what do we say? I said the preparation was not consistent, and that's why you ended up with the product that you had. Now you're in a position where you hope that consistency continues. This doesn't get rid of the feeling that we had on Saturday. That feeling's always going to be there. It doesn't just erase all the problems that happened, and it doesn't make us feel any better that it went down. But in time, it could very well progress in a direction where you're like, you know what, it was just a really, really fucked up experience. It was a nightmare. We all lived through it, and we got through it. We're better for it. Jury's still out on that. Jury's still out. That's not set in stone yet. You still have a lot of work to do, man. Because last I checked, Miami of Ohio is a pretty solid team. And anybody is going to think that they have a shot at Notre Dame after what went down. And I hate to harken back to that, but the story of this season starts with that game. And it ends with how they respond. The first page was written yesterday. Well, the second page was written yesterday. And I liked it. This is a fresh chapter in the Marcus Freeman era. I want it to continue. I want this to continue for the good of this program, for the good of Notre Dame, and for the general well-being of me and other fans, right? That said, I don't love the constant negativity, the constant bitching and moaning that this fan base has. I think that when you have a performance like that, you should give a round of applause. You should absolutely be happy with what you saw. We could all kind of breathe a sigh of relief. All while acknowledging the fact that, yes, there is still work to be done. There is still plenty of upside to be had here. Your season doesn't start and end with being 2-1. And if you're going to throw a parade after beating Purdue, you're out of your freaking mind, and no one here feels that way. But to be constantly negative and belabor the point of what happened, last week. I know I brought up last weekend a lot too, guys, but that's also unfair to just continue to be like, well, why didn't it happen last weekend? Well, you know why it didn't happen last weekend. Because they prepared like shit. They came out flat. Marcus Freeman was flat. There was no emotion. Anybody that was in that stadium saw that. I wasn't, but that's what they say. It was like, man, there was zero juice on that sideline. They took it for granted. And now we will find out if they do that again. And if they do that again, then we're having a deep conversation. But I said it. This was the last crossroads for Marcus Freeman. Like, if you can't get past Purdue after what happened against NIU, then we are watching other football teams. We're watching other head coaches and their programs and how they get ready week in and week out. What's the level of consistency? And then we're evaluating if we want to make a move at them. I hope that we don't have to do that. But that was the conversation that was had, and that's at least temporarily put to bed. It could easily wake back up. But I love how pissed off this team was. I love the performance. I think the defense is absolutely phenomenal, damn near perfect. It's just exactly what you want in a defense. And I love what we saw with the offensive line, and I love how athletic Riley Leonard is, and I love that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price may not love each other. Again, that's just me. I don't know. I love the competitive spirit, that back and forth, and when they make plays, it's just a different type of squad there, as far as the backfield's concerned, and a different type of rushing attack. But we also acknowledge the fact that you got to get better through the air. You got to find answers. The quarterback position remains a question at Notre Dame, as it has for a long time. Will it get answered? We'll have to see. Shamrock Energy, like, subscribe, comment. Anybody that comments on my videos, I usually get to them. Anybody that disagrees with me, I'm usually willing to hear their point, and I'm willing to hear yours. This is a better day in Notre Dame land than what it was just a week ago. Let's see if it continues.